Hey guys, I want to talk about a very deep and important lesson which my sickness has forced me to integrate for all I already understood it. And I already knew it. And I've already told people this, I've already taught people this, but I was not doing it in my own life. And I think by not doing it in my own life, I created detrimental issues with my own health and created tension and stress, which undoubtedly contributed to my sickness and suppressed my immune system. And it's a very deep and parts of it, let's see how I go with this. It's quite a deep and personal thing, but I think it'll help people to understand this, or to have this pointed out. And it's about feelings and emotions, and also at the same time how we view ourselves. So let me start right off the bat by saying, the faster we realize there are no wrong feelings to feel, and there are no wrong emotions to feel, the faster we become a complete whole and integrated human being. Now, I want to give you an example. Fritzy remembers this well, and when I first started looking after the children here, I had two boys, and they were both severely traumatized. Now, I won't get into why they were traumatized, but they were. And they were scared, and one was severely sick with a life-threatening condition, which he'll have for the rest of his life. And I could see this fragility, this fear of the world, and this need for security, this need for comfort, this need for stability. And I could see that these children didn't have it. And thus I began to say to myself, well, I have to be that. But due to my conditioning, growing up in the world we all grow up in, we all have the same conditioning, the idea of what a man should be was apparent to me, that he should be in line with his emotions, but at the same time I'd also been influenced and grown up to feel that a man should be strong and sturdy and a good provider, and not necessarily show a lot of emotion. And that's kind of reflected from the men in my life when I was growing up. That was the way they tackled it, and there's nothing, I'm not saying anything negative against them, but I see that it's wrong now. So I started suppressing my own needs and emotions to appear strong to the children. If I was sick, I wouldn't let them see me sick. Now, this came from a place of extreme circumstance, and let me give you an example. One of those boys forced me to Skype my parents in the UK, my family in the UK, with him present, so he could talk to them. And he was so nervous, given that he'd watched all of his family pass away from the same virus that he has, that he was very sure that I was going to pass away. He was positive that the time will come where I'll die and I won't be there for him. And he wanted to Skype my parents. God bless him. He wanted to Skype them so as he could get a guarantee from them that if anything happened to me, they'd not forget him. And these are very powerful circumstances to find yourself in. And I'll just put that light on, might be better. These are very powerful circumstances to find yourself in. It's too bright. Sorry, it's putting me off. You'll have to put up with me being dull. hopefully not in what I say, I mean in the light. I subsequently saw this need to hide my own human needs. And that started to echo into something I'd learned not to do but started doing, and that was suppressing my own feelings. As in, when I had feelings of fear, I would suppress them, say I'm not allowed to feel that. When I had feelings of pressure and I needed an emotional release, I started to say no, that's not allowed. So these very natural feelings that were rising up inside me, fear and weakness and all of these things that we do our best to combat to be efficient human beings. But the pressure as well, the need for an emotional release dealing with these new circumstances, I would suppress them and tell my body that what it was doing was wrong. I would tell it, I would say, no, you're not supposed to feel that. But it was feeling it, in which case it definitely was supposed to be feeling it. Now, let me see if I turn this around, you might see me a little bit better. The sun is just set this side, so. Every feeling you feel is correct. If you feel jealous, if you feel guilt, if you feel sadness, if you feel joy, if you feel compassion, if you feel attraction, there's nothing wrong with those feelings. Acting on them is a different story, and acting on those feelings can get us into big trouble. But understanding that as your body allows that feeling to rise up within it, there's nothing wrong with the feeling. And telling your body that's wrong creates a state of disease or dis-ease within inside your temple, within inside your body. And I was doing that repetitively for a long time. And Fritzi remembers it well. I was very stern and strict and straight, and I actually got to the point of trying to cope with what was going on around me where it's time to put that light on, you're not going to see me at all if not. I'll have to just put up with it. I couldn't cry. I couldn't let emotions flow from me because I taught my body not to do it. And it was the wrong thing to do, and it created a lot of tension in me. And actually upon meeting Fritzi, it was the first time in years that I was able to cry, and she brought that out of me. Fritzi healed me a great deal from the way I was behaving, but I still carried those things forward. And I became militantly strict on myself to the degree where I literally, Fritzi the other day reminded me that I once said to her, we should never take a day off here because this is life and death. And I'd gone into this bad spiral, which was not healthy, obviously. So it started by feeling feelings that needed to be felt. You know, if I need to cry, I need to cry, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, there might be an appropriate situation to cry and not to cry, perhaps. But then who is to say that? Does anyone tell the branch of a tree that it's not its time to move in the wind? Well, no, not at all. Because if you reflect that into the way things work in the world, and you say, what's blowing the leaves of the tree? Is the tree moving, or is the wind moving the tree, or is the tree moving in the wind? You get to the point in meditation where you say, actually, neither. It is, and my mind is moving. My mind is flip-flopping between the two ideas. And thus, if we can allow ourselves to be in that state where we understand that it just is, and our mind is the thing moving, then that moving mind becomes something that we can tackle. And that moving mind became my enemy in a covert way. Now, I was still able to function, but I was suffering on a very personal note. I was suffering internally due to what was going on. And I wasn't conscious of it until recently when I started getting sick. And I had a lot of time on my own in bed. I could start to become conscious of that suffering and how that was probably adding to my inability to fight off these illnesses. That on top of the fact that I've been battered with malaria and typhoid and Lyme and babesiosis and all these things and everything else, all the emotional traumas, you know, it's a lot going on. I'm going to make a video about my about how I'm unapologetically egoic. I recorded one, but I haven't uploaded it. I'll rewatch it. I don't feel like it was done correctly, but I'm going to put that on so you're aware that I'm becoming conscious of things. But when you feel something, you feel it for a reason. Don't block it. Now, you don't necessarily act on it. If you lust after a woman and you're going to go immediately act on it, this is completely wrong. But what you do is you accept, okay, my body felt that, but I, the observer of what my body just did, has a decision to make. Do I act on it or do I not? And when you are in the position where you can even make that decision, you're awakened to yourself. You're conscious. You're in control. When you are forced to act on those feelings, then you're not in control. But being conscious of the fact that they must happen sometimes, and you mustn't judge them and be brutal on yourself with them. So long as you don't act on them. You can judge yourself if you act on them, but if they come up, don't think, oh, I'm terrible, I'm weak, is what I used to do. I'm weak because I need to cry, and these children have gone through much more than me, and I'm just looking after them. And this is not correct. Just feelings are there for a reason, and they just are. Just as the tree blows in the wind, and it's not the tree moving or the wind moving the tree, it just is, and it's your mind moving, deciphering which one it's doing. When you feel a need to release, then it just is what it is, and you should release if it's an appropriate location. You know, if you need to cry, cry. And I'm learning that, and I still struggle with it, because I still suppress things, because I'm still navigating all of that aspect of myself, this new structure of my ego, which I've created since arriving in Tanzania. I've slowly added building blocks to my identity and labels of father, director, and so on and so forth, YouTuber. So once you establish that your feelings are never wrong, but acting on them can be, once you establish that your feelings are no different to a tree blowing in the wind, and there's no way to discern if the tree is moving or the wind is moving the tree, and then you come to the conclusion that it's your mind that's moving. Once you come to that position, and then you realize your mind is moving around the concept of your own feelings, then you get to a place of stability where you can start working on this. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to fix it overnight, because we've all had a lifetime of conditioning in this way. Societal conditioning and construct is what most of us are. Most of us are actors. We're taught to act from being a child. Then you start to gain some healing and peace inside your body. But the next thing that happened to me was I also started to judge myself very heavily on those feelings and not on my actions necessarily. Now, I judge my own actions, and I am a big fan of judging my own actions, and I'm quite happy to judge other people's actions as worthy or unworthy to be around my family, for example. But judging the things that rise in you naturally, for instance, your feelings of fear, your feelings of happiness, your feelings of weakness, or your feelings of strength, to judge them and to say that that's wrong when they arise within you is completely ridiculous, because you didn't have control of that. Now, what I started to do was judge myself so heavily, and I got to the point where I was very critical of myself, dangerously so. Overbearingly, I became partially my own worst enemy in that sense. And the way I've come to understand this and to get around this as a person who has faith and has a relationship with God is I was really judging myself heavily, and I was saying, by whose standard am I judging myself? And I said, well, I'm judging myself by a standard of my ideal of perfection, which is an impossible standard to reach, which all spiritual teachings try to tell us and say. Many people can come close to a state of perfected purity, but most of us will never do it. And it was recently I got a lesson from a very unusual source. And it blew my mind open. And what happened was I was really dwelling on this, and I was feeling this need to let my emotions and feelings flow and to not judge them, but to judge my actions. But then I started to understand I was really judging myself as an imperfect vision of what I wanted to be. And I was praying about it, and a little song came up in my YouTube recommendations from a movie I'd never seen. And the movie is a religious movie, and it's about the Prince of Egypt, or Moses. And I find this unusual as a thing that God used to wake me up, but he brought this song before me by a synchronistic event. There was no reason for it to be in my recommended song list, I didn't feel, but either way, call it chance or God, hearing it woke me up. And what I mean by woke me up was, there's a song in there, Look at Yourself Through Heaven's Eyes, and this is the song that came up on my YouTube list. And it's a kid's cartoon. It's a ridiculous place to get a deep lesson, almost. But the lesson came, look at your life through heaven's eyes. And I asked myself, as God looks down on me and the problems that I have and face, and the problems that I've encountered trying to deal with. If I was looking at my life through heaven's eyes, I'm looking at my life through the eyes of a father and a mother in my eyes. And I look at my son and all my sons and my daughters, and I've always got forgiveness for the mistakes they make. I can get angry because of the things they do. But getting angry doesn't mean it doesn't end with forgiveness. So I looked at my life through heaven's eyes. And I said to myself, maybe, just maybe, my past wrongs, etc. were never really that big of a problem for God. Because when I look at my life in that way, through the eyes of a mother and father, as I look at my own children, then I say as humbly as I can, I actually don't think these little small things that I was beating myself up about are even on the radar for God. And thus shouldn't really be on my radar unless they're getting out of control. And they shouldn't be on your radar unless they're getting out of control. So two things which have changed my outlook on my own internal workings are things that I knew, but I wasn't integrating. Things that I show the children around me, but I wasn't integrating. And that is, when your feelings come, they are supposed to come. Acting on them isn't necessarily correct, but allowing them to be, you shouldn't judge them. You shouldn't judge who you are when a feeling rises up inside you had little control over. Often thoughts appear in our heads like a hiccup. You can't then judge yourself to be this, that or the other because of that. You have to accept that it happened. And whether you act on it, that space that allows you to decide to act on it or not, that's you. And that's the part of you that you can judge. But if you feel that you're not doing well enough, or if you feel that you're not achieving enough, or if you feel like you're not in line enough, you're not disciplined, whatever it might be, pause and look at your life through the eyes of a mother and father. Look at your life through heaven's eyes and say, would you be pleased with that? And I think, mistakes or not, so long as you're pushing and trying, what parent doesn't love their child when they try their best? And it was just such a relief. It was such a relief listening to this crazy cartoon song, or Disney or whatever it is, and for my mind to just go, stop doing that to yourself. Because you're good enough, if you look at your life through heaven's eyes, you'll know. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That's all I wanted to share. Grateful for my synchronicities and the lessons and changes they bring to my heart and soul. God bless, guys.